Welcome to Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston, PhD. Glenn has held his doctorate in psychology for more than 30 years and is also a former multi-million-dollar consultant to the big food industry and uses his experience to help you defeat your cravings. This show will help you to focus on dramatically reducing cravings and leave the diet mentality behind, so you can more easily and effortlessly achieve your health, fitness, and body composition goals. Please remember, no doctor-patient relationship is created via this show, and you are responsible for confirming any changes to your diet, health, or psychological routines with an appropriately licensed professional before implementing them. Now, before we get started, if you haven't yet downloaded the free smartphone app to access dozens of these recordings all in one place, as well as to avail yourself of a confidential community for support, motivation, and assistance, please visit the podcast link on defeatyourcravings.com as soon as possible. And now, here's your host, Dr. Glenn Livingston.
Hey, this is the very good Dr. Glenn Livingston, and I'm here with a kind-hearted woman named Alice, who's agreed to share her experience and strength and wisdom and hope, as well as her trials and tribulations and stumbles and falls, so that you can all benefit from the experience and her coaching session. And Alice, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. It's great to speak. I've been looking forward to it.
I've been looking forward to this also. And if you would, why don't you start at the beginning, give us a little history about your relationship with food, and then maybe tell us how you came across us and what changed.
My story goes back a long time. The first time I remember being conscious about trying to eat less or diet, I was still a child and maybe about 10, 11. And I would skip meals at school, and then I would binge on cereal later at night. Both my parents worked very hard when I was a child. So I was mostly brought up by a nanny, like a paid nanny, who's a lovely, lovely woman who I'm still in contact with. And she looked after me for 14 years, but she was very, very overweight. I was very frightened of becoming like that as a child. So I try not to eat much of the food that she gave me. I went to an all-girls school, so there was always a competition and who could be the skinniest at school. But really things started to get much more extreme for me after school. I went to medical school for a couple of years, and I think the pressure got to me there, and I just restricted severely for 2 years and became quite unwell from that. So much so that I had to leave the university that I was at. And I was a patient in an eating disorder clinic for a while to regain weight.
How old were you then?
That was age 20 when that happened.
Okay.
Then they packed me up and sent me on my way, and it was back into the real world. That clinic didn't really teach me about dealing with food. They very much forced you had to eat 3 meals a day with 3 snacks, and they were trying to build up your calorie intake. So after that, it's like a switch happened where I just ate much more food than I ever really needed and started to pile on weight after that, which in my head was always better than being that dangerous low weight that I had gotten to. I went back to university and I got my bachelor's and master's, and I'm doing my PhD now, but my weight has fluctuated so much over the past 6 or 7 years. And I've tried various things. I attended OA religiously every week. They said I needed to find a higher power. I read the Bible. I completely went into, okay, so do I need a religion to get me through this eating? It's isolated me from friends and family. I've cancelled holidays and parties and events and simple things with friends. I've really, really isolated myself. Now I'm 28, so I'd say my 20s has gone to the pig. I have lost a lot of years. I'd go on juice cleanses. I'd go on like a 30-day juice cleanse and lose loads of weight. And then I wasn't teaching myself how to eat, so I just binge afterwards. The pandemic and the lockdown became very pronounced for me with all of this, and I really turned to food. And it was Easter this year where I turned to my mum and just said, I can't do it anymore. I don't know what to do. There's something wrong with me. I'm totally broken. Other people seem to be able to have 3 meals a day. There are so many days where I have eaten myself just silly, eaten to the point of feeling sick. And then beyond that point, where I'm doubled over in pain, it's been absolutely awful. In January, I had a diagnosis from the NHS of binge eating disorder. And I was always a bit hesitant to believe myself as a binge eater. I didn't want to accept that that was something that I did, which is why it's really helpful with the definition of anything beyond my food plan as binge. But in this sort of Easter period, I started to look online and I found your book. So I downloaded the audiobook and listened to it twice in a row on 2 consecutive days and on like 1.5 of the speed. I loved it. It made so much sense to me.
What part of it was most relieving to you?
Because you had written it and you had experienced the pain of this concept. I had spent so much time in OA believing that I was totally powerless over food and all these complicated steps and that I needed a sponsor. But this was just the simplicity of it. And the fact that you had written it from a point of view of someone who had gone through this. I've tried to speak to nutritionists and I've tried to speak to people, but hearing it from somebody else who has recovered from this binge eating, that really, really spoke to me. And as an academic and someone who's focused a lot on that in my life, it was really difficult at the beginning to engage and believe in this concept of the pig, but it gave me so much power back. And it says it all in the title. That was a huge relief for me. So I spent the next day believing that I could implement this by myself. And I gave up after 1 day. And I thought, okay, that's not for me. Maybe that was all nonsense. And my mum called me a couple of days later and said, darling, I found this coach online who deals with binge eating. And she sent me the link for this coach who's based in the UK. And she was trained in your method. And I thought, this is unbelievable, because I hadn't mentioned the book at all to my mom and I'd only just sort of given up on it. But she had found this coach independently. So I know you say don't count days, but for the first 90 days, I wanted to. So I'm on day 65 now, and I've had, I think, 7 coaching sessions with my coach over Zoom in the UK here. And things have radically changed in my life. And really, I'm so grateful for having read your book and all of the work that you've done.
How can I help you?
About a week and a half ago, I went on holiday and I let the pig out for a day. It wasn't during the holiday. It was at the end of the holiday after I'd gotten back to the UK. My mum has a problem with alcohol. We get along very well, and that's been for my whole life that she's had this drinking problem. Her and my dad, they invited me on holiday with them and I went away with them for a week. I had my one simple rule that I implemented at the beginning of this process. So
what's your one rule?
I eat 3 meals a day with no snacks in between.
Okay. 3 meals a day, nothing in between.
Yeah, that has worked wonders for me and it's such a relief.
How do you define a meal?
I don't really define a meal. I've heard in the podcast people having very strict definitions for meals, but I know in my head that for breakfast I have a couple of boiled eggs with some vegetables and fruit, and then I follow a paleo.
If you're not running into any trouble with the meals bleeding into each other, that's fine.
The meals have to be at least 2 hours apart, so that helps me. And
good.
I have a guideline that no meal would ever be over 700 calories, but that's not like a very strict rule. I tend to not have a problem with that because I'm only eating fruit, veg, meat, fish. So it's quite hard to go over 700 calories with that. You'd have to eat a lot of vegetables. I went on this holiday and suddenly I was on someone else's time schedule, so my parents, and I started to allow myself sort of micro binges. I find it stressful being around my mum when she's getting drunk and then when she's drunk, which when you're on holiday, I should have thought more carefully about it before I went. But when you're on holiday, that starts at lunchtime with her. That was stressful. And I was allowing myself to have pieces of fruit, handfuls of nuts in between meals, which I hadn't done at all before this holiday. And I just sort of let myself off about it. And it wasn't too bad on the holiday. But then what happened the day we got back, and I was with my parents in their house in London. I mean, boy, the pig just got out of the cage. It felt like total loss of control because I was in my parents' house. None of the food I have purchased myself. So that sort of financial cost of a binge wasn't there because I'm just eating food that is in sort of the pantry in my parents' house. So who's going to notice if this pack of nuts have gone, if this whole box of granola is gone, who's going to notice? There was that sort of pig being like, you haven't paid for any of this, no one's going to notice, and you're so tired and you've had to deal with your mum drinking all holiday. And because I was sleeping in the sofa of their hotel room, I never really got my own space.
Are you back on track, or you need help getting back on track?
No, you very kindly replied to a desperate email that I sent in, and I spoke to my coach about it. The advice from both of you was go back to your one simple rule, because I only ever really had this one rule to begin with that was 3 meals a day with no snacks in between, that spaced 2 hours apart. I knew in the back of my head that that's what I had to go back to, but I suppose because I'd lost it and I'd had a binge, I thought I was being a bit stubborn about, well, surely I've got to try something else now. But because both of you had said the same thing, go back to your one simple rule. So I just went back to it.
We tag teamed you.
Yeah. And, it was really hard that day after the binge. I had to drink a lot of water. I had to really separate myself from the pig because it was screaming at me and saying terrible things. And what I found interesting is that when I listened to your book or listened to any of the podcasts, I always sort of skipped over the concept of what happens if I binge, because I'm sort of that type A, very high achieving sort of person. I thought, well, if I'm committing to this process, surely I'm never going to binge again. So I skipped over it. But I found myself having to go back to the sort of binge recovery worksheet you have on your readers' bonuses.
That's okay. That's okay. That's a good way to do it. When you're aiming at the bullseye, you really do want to have 100% determination and faith that you're going to hit the bullseye. You don't want all the doubt and insecurity running through your mind. That's okay.
So I heard someone speak about how when they were living in a Buddhist monastery, and the monk said to him, you're allowed 1 minute of regret. And that really helped me. I'm allowed 1 minute to regret this binge that I had. And I hear you say a lot, commit with perfection, but forgive yourself with dignity. So perfection's fine in terms of my aim. But then after having this, it was terrible. It was awful. I even thinking about it now makes me nervous.
It makes the pig excited. Anxiety is a pig's wish. When it comes to food, binge anxiety doesn't really exist. It's just the pig really, really, really wanting to do it again. That's all that is. When you translate it, you're accomplishing the separation, and that's the first step in preventing it.
Yeah.
So you're back on track.
So I'm back on track, yes. And what really helped was you said to me in your email, you've done it before, so you can do it again. Whereas the pig was saying, look, you've just failed. See, there's no point in doing this. And it was a good sort of argument against the pig in that moment. I suppose what I'd like to have some help with is when I spoke to my coach about analysis of what happened, if I seriously analyze what happened in this, either there's a hole in my food plan or there's a pig squeal that works really well on me. I don't think there's a hole in my food plan. I log all my food on MyFitnessPal, and I know that I'm having enough calories, and I know that I'm getting enough exercise. So I think the pig squeal that works really well on me is that my mum has her alcohol, and with all of the pain and the memories that come from that. So you've got food, and food really isn't as bad as alcohol. So, when you're exposed to her drinking, especially for an extended period of time, like a holiday, then we can go to food. Then there's a binge that you can have, and they sort of deserve the knockout effect of the binge, because at least my eyes aren't rolling to the back of my head whilst I conk out on the sofa every night. So I have thought a lot about this, and I think it's a really strong squeal for me that I need to deal with, because I think that in my analysis, that's what caused that binge for me.
Have you tried to refute it?
I have thought about refuting it. I don't know if I did it in a way that I truly believed. The refutation I came up with at the moment is food's actually worse than wine. I don't know if I believe that. And then I want to be a role model to my mum. I think the pig, this ties into another squeal that the pig's always said, it's not that bad. It's not that bad, but it is that bad in that it's wiped away my 20s. It's taken me away from so many opportunities in my life. So I know rationally that her drinking alcohol is biologically, chemically, like a lot more damaging than food. So I don't seem to be able to push past that squeal.
Okay, so let's not use that. She may actually be doing more damage with wine than food, even though food does a tremendous amount of damage. We don't want to say something that we don't believe. Okay, so I want to be a role model for my mom. You want to be an example and a leader and show her that it's possible to break an addiction, and binge eating has stolen decades from your life.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's anything practical that you needed to do when you're traveling to see your mom, knowing that it's a little more tempting to binge because the food is free, knowing that it's a little more stressful because you're around your mother? For a daughter to see her mom doing that, it's a little deflating. You know, we all merged with our parents. That's our original identifications were. And it's deflating when they don't live up to our expectations and goals. We want them to be aspirational models, but sometimes they're not. Maybe she's an aspirational model in a lot of other ways. It always bothers me that my dad won't wash his jeans. I don't know why, but we'll go out to dinner. He's got these filthy jeans on with stains all over them, and I just can't get him to wash them. I feel embarrassed, and it makes me want to be messier. You know, I've had to work over the course of my life to teach myself clean habits. And, you know, I have a girlfriend who's very clean, and I really only want to be clean for her, but I want to be clean for myself. But when I'm with my dad, I know that I'm going to experience that. I know it's going to be stressful. And so I do some journaling before I go. I dress extra nicely. I pay extra attention to what I'm wearing because I want to be a role model, and I want to distinguish for myself that I'm not going to follow his psychology, even though I love the guy to death. He's a really good guy. Brilliant. He's done a lot of good things in the world. He's basically very nice to me. He loves me, but he wears dirty jeans. And so I know this. I know that time with him is going to be stressful to me because I feel deflated about that. I kind of hope he doesn't hear this. Also, I don't think he will. I take the extra steps to protect myself. And with regards to food, what makes me a little depressed, and it used to be there was a link between depression and food. So I'm aware that could be there. It's not really there anymore, but just in case, I plan to eat something substantial before I go. So I'm not going to be hungry. I plan what I'm going to have when I get back. So I'll have a really nice, healthy juice waiting for me in a mason jar in the refrigerator, or sometimes I'll take it with me. Sometimes I'll have something in the car. I recognize it as a stressful, emotionally deflating event. I make preparations to do that because I'm not going to not see him. There's basically no chance that I can talk him out of this behavior. I don't know if any of that resonates with you. Is there anything you would do in retrospect to prepare yourself or to make it nicer for you, more comfortable for you?
That sounds like a really good idea. And I had thought about this a bit because I live in Cambridge, so I go back to visit my parents in London occasionally. And it's not a problem for me when I go and visit them for the weekend because I have my own room in my parents' house. So when she starts to drink, she's okay after about half a glass, and then it descends to chaos. So she'll start drinking about 5, 6. And I know that after 15 minutes of her opening that bottle, that I'm either in my room upstairs or I'm out of the house walking, or I just don't get involved beyond then. I think that I definitely can go abroad with my parents, and it's lovely when they invite me, and I don't want the pig to take that away from me to be with them. I mean, part of my big why is to have more meaningful time with them. So I wouldn't want that to be taken away. But I think that some sort of protection I could give myself is to sort of agree to go away with them if I have my own room. I struggle with that because that sounds really selfish and it sounds like I'm being a princess, or I need my own hotel room. But my dad understands it is too tough for me to be exposed to that. So I definitely could do if I'm in my own room. So I've got somewhere to retreat to.
I think it would be selfish not to take care of yourself in that situation, because you can't really be present with your mom if you're overstimulated and inundated with her behavior. You need to be able to be with her in small doses and then go someplace where you can detox so you can continue to be with her. Otherwise, you're going to have a bad experience and make bad memories.
Yeah, and I need all of my patients. I love my mum and she is a wonderful woman, but because of the alcohol in the evening, when she's sober during the day, she's on edge and she can be very easy to anger and wind up and gets cross with people. But I need all my patients when I'm with her. So actually, I agree, yeah, that wouldn't be selfish if I said I'd love to come away, but I need to have my own space when we're away. The other thing that I can do is I can only do one meal out with them, which would be good because then I'm only exposed to one set of drinking. My dad doesn't really drink, but I wouldn't have to be tugged down by it all day long. So if I was maybe more independent on that holiday, I wouldn't want her to feel that I'm avoiding her. But definitely, I think one meal a day with them would be understandable.
There you go. How confident are you that you're going to comply with your simple rule, 3 meals a day with nothing in between, even if you go to see your parents?
I do feel 100% because even though I missed one day because of that terrible binge, but my coach tells me that's still a 98% success rate. So even though that's 98%, I feel 100% that those guidelines we just spoke about and my one simple rule that I can still stick to. It's just the separation. When I get upset or angry, I am so aware now, only since starting this process, how my brain goes to food immediately. Earlier, my Wi Fi crashed down and I was in the middle of working on something online. And the pig took that as an opportunity to say, why don't we just have lunch? And it was 10 o'clock in the morning. And it's because I was angry about the Wi Fi shutting down. So I'm getting so much better at realizing when the pig squeals and that's not me. But that's always comes after a stressful, some sort of emotion that's very stressful to deal with.
Let's just go over the spiel you had again. And I want to understand what changed in the course of discussing the refutation that's made you more confident. The spiel was that your mother is struggling with alcohol, and that's much worse, doing a lot more damage than what you're doing with food. It's not really so bad what you're doing with food, and you kind of deserve it because this is stressful. So let's just binge whenever we're around mom. And the refutations that you have were that you want to be a role model and a leader for her, ensure that it's possible to break an addiction, and that it actually is that bad because it's stolen decades from your life. And then we eliminated the idea that food was worse than wine because you didn't really believe that. And then we talked about just a couple of strategies for getting through the time with mom and respecting that it actually is stressful. What was it in this conversation that got you to 100%?
I suppose if I put things in place to protect myself, then I'm no longer getting to the point where I feel that I'm eating at her, because I'm very aware when I'm binging that that's the last thing my mum would want me to do. I've spoken to her a lot about the problems that I have with food. She's very aware of it. And I know that when I get it, all that junk food, and I sit in my bed and I just vegetate for hours doing that, I know that the first person I'm hurting is me and the second person I'm hurting is my mum. But that idea that we spoke about of protection and that that's not selfish lets me realize, how can I forever be reacting to her drinking with my eating? At some point that chain has got to stop, and it's not going to stop from her. I mean, I've tried everything in the world to make that stop, but it's not going to. So I can only focus on me and the steps that I can put in place around me. So I suppose us talking about the practical things I can do to not be exposed so much to her drinking, then the pig wouldn't have an opportunity to say, look, she's drinking, that hurts you, hasn't it hurt all your life? Why don't we go upstairs and have a big binge? The idea of protection and that not being selfish.
Good, 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 good. What would it mean to you to be completely confident that you're going to have 3 meals a day with nothing in between for the whole year? You're going to have nothing but 3 meals a day and nothing in between.
I can feel little tingles up and down my legs. Like, it makes me so excited to think that I would do that for a year. There's so much that I want to achieve in the next year. I'm running the London Marathon to raise money for my genetic disorder that my brother has. I'm working on my PhD, and ever since I've started this process, wow, my mind can focus so much better on the work that I've got to do. I can be with friends and not be thinking about how do I get away so that I can go and eat. my life has changed so much for the better. There's so much more freedom. And to think that that would continue to increase in the next year, I feel that I'd finally be living like me. I'd finally be looking in the mirror and seeing myself rather than someone who's just hidden behind boxes and wrappers and just layers of fat, because I don't need that protection. Something that really is one of my sort of mantras is self-regulation rather than self-medication. And the idea of being a self-regulating adult woman and the ripple effect that would have in my life and on the people around me, that makes me feel really happy and really positive.
Can you say that mantra again?
Self-regulation over self-medication.
Self-regulate, don't self-medicate.
Yes.
I love it. Alice, what questions or concerns do you have?
I thought I was going to have loads of concerns and I was going to ask you, do I need to reject holiday invitations forever? Do I need to really set complicated rules? But I don't think I do, actually. I think the big thing that I'd like to say is thank you. I hadn't read anything over these past few years that changed my relationship with food as much as reading your book has. I'm really grateful for all of the podcasts. I love hearing you chat to your clients. I think the biggest thing that worked for me was about this being a character decision. I think you often talk about you're in love with the person that you're becoming, and I definitely do feel in love with the person that I'm becoming.
Beautiful way to put it.
So thank you so much. I think your work has fundamentally changed my life, and the experience of having had that binge, and for it to have been one day and one binge only, I mean, that used to be months gone for me, and that was one day. So yeah, thank you so much, and it's changed everything for me.
You're very welcome. You deserve it. And my impression from this session is that all you needed with your mom was permission to put yourself first. I think that's all you really needed. Make sense?
Yes, definitely makes sense.
Good.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And that brings us to the end of today's broadcast of Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston. Now, if you'd like to find out more about the products and services Dr. Glenn offers to help you dramatically reduce your cravings and stop overeating in 90 days or less, please visit defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. That's defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. Thanks.